My mother always criticized my weight and valued appearances more than people. So when I got engaged, I thought she'd finally celebrate and say she was proud of me. I was wrong. My mom decided I wasn't worth the wedding fund my late dad left behind, and gave it away to my supposed pretty cousin. I'm Casey. At 25. I work as a chef and dream of writing and directing films that'll make people cry in the dark for all the right reasons. But my story? It had me crying for all the wrong ones. I grew up in a house where we vacuumed even if the carpet was spotless, where smiles were worn like foundation, and where my mom, Janet, cared more about how things looked than how we actually felt. It felt like living in a museum where I was the one exhibit that never quite fit. Everything had to look perfect from the outside. Our lawn, holiday cards, and Sunday dinner conversations. But inside these walls, I learned early that appearances mattered more than feelings, and I was consistently falling short of my mom's standards. I'm the only child, which you'd think would make me precious cargo. No, it just meant all of mom's scrutiny had nowhere else to land. When my dad, Billy, died during my junior year of high school, something shifted in her. The criticism that used to come in whispers got louder, sharper, and more frequent. Do you really need more? She'd snap while I reach for more food at dinner. You're already bursting out of those jeans. Or my personal favorite, delivered during a crowded lunch at Romano's Bistro last spring. God, slow down. You graze your food like cattle. Could you chew any louder? Everyone's staring at us. The heat that rushed to my face that day could have cooked pasta. I wanted to disappear under the checkered tablecloth. But instead I just pushed my plate away and excused myself to the bathroom, where I cried ugly tears into scratchy paper towels. But here's what kept me going. Dad's voice that kept echoing in my memory from those summer evenings on our back porch. He'd sip his lemon and honey tea and tell me about the wedding fund he'd set up, and how he couldn't wait to walk me down the aisle someday. I might cry like a baby, he'd said, grinning, but I'll be the proudest father there. Yes, the proudest. That account sat in Mom's name for safekeeping, waiting for the day I'd need it. I used to picture the wedding it would pay for, nothing fancy, just people who actually loved me, and good food. Of course, the cake would be the crown jewel, and I'd bake it myself. God, I had so many dreams about that day. When my boyfriend Marco proposed last month in our tiny apartment kitchen, while I was making his favorite lasagna, I thought about Dad's words. Marco got down on one knee right there between the stove and the refrigerator, pasta sauce splattered on his shirt, and asked me to marry him with tears in his eyes. You're everything I never knew I needed, he said. I said yes before he finished the question. Mom's reaction to our engagement felt like a slap across the face. She barely looked up from her magazine when I showed her the ring. Well, I suppose someone had to say yes eventually, she said with a shrug. Though I can't imagine what he's thinking. I figured she was processing, maybe worried about losing me. So I gave her some space and time. 2 weeks later, she called about Sunday dinner at Aunt Hilda's house. She said the whole family would be there, including my cousin Elise. I'd grown up watching everyone fawn over Elise, and honestly, I got it. She looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. All long legs, perfect skin, and confidence that filled every room she entered. At 23, she already had that effortless elegance I'd spent years trying to fake. But here's the thing about Elise, beneath all that beauty, she'd always been kind to me. While other relatives made passive-aggressive comments about my weight or my phase of wanting to direct short films, Elise just listened. She asked about my aspirations and remembered details about my auditions that even Mom forgot or ignored. So, fast forward to the dinner. It started normally. Aunt Hilda's pot roast, Uncle Mark's terrible jokes, and Grandma Rose complaining about her arthritis. I'd just finished telling everyone about Marco's proposal when Mom stood up and tapped her wine glass with her fork. I have an announcement, she said, and my heart jumped. Finally, She was going to celebrate my engagement properly. Finally, she'd say some good things about me. That's what I thought. The table fell quiet. Even the kids stopped fidgeting. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach. Mom's smile spread wide as she looked directly at Elise. I've decided to give Casey's wedding fund to Elise. She's such a beautiful girl with real potential to find someone special. It seems like the practical choice. It felt like a grave had opened somewhere inside me. My fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against my plate, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Mom, I'm engaged. I'm getting married. She turned to me with a look of pure disdain. Oh, please, Casey. Let's not pretend this is a real engagement. You're not exactly bride material. Look at yourself. You can barely fit into your own clothes. Elise actually has a chance of finding someone decent and charming. I was mortified. Every face at the table blurred except Mom's, which remained sharp and cold as winter glass. I felt exposed and raw, like she'd stripped me naked in front of everyone. God. It was crushing. Uncle Mark cleared his throat uncomfortably. Aunt Hilda suddenly became very interested in her mashed potatoes. And Grandma Rose just stared at her hands. Nobody said a word. Nobody except Elise. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the awkward silence like a knife. I'm not taking it. Every head turned toward her, including Mom's. You're destroying your own daughter. Aunt Janet. I've watched you do it for years. And I can't stay quiet anymore. Elise. Honey. No. You don't get to honey me after what you just did. You know what the difference is between Casey and me? My mother built me up every single day of my life. She told me I was smart, talented, and beautiful. Not because of how I looked, but because of who I was. You've spent years tearing Casey down. And for what? Because you're jealous? Insecure of your own daughter? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Mom's face turned pale, then red. That's ridiculous. Is it, Aunt Janet? Because it looks like you can't stand that your daughter is talented and brave and creative. She makes these incredible short films. She cooks like a dream. She's funny and kind and real. And instead of celebrating that, you spend your time criticizing her weight and telling her she's not good enough. Elise turned to me. Casey, you know that theater program at Riverside University you've talked about for years? The one you're scared to apply to because she convinced you you're not good enough? You need to apply. This week. You want to know why? Because you're perfect. Absolutely flawless the way you are. Girl. You don't need anyone's approval to know your worth. I sat frozen, feeling like I was shrinking into my chair under Mom's harsh gaze. The familiar shame draped like a cloak over me. The same feeling I'd carried since childhood, like I was taking up too much space in my own life. Around the table, my family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But nobody met my eyes. Nobody defended me. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Elise grabbed her purse from the back of her chair. I'm leaving. And Casey? Call me later. We need to talk. She walked out, leaving the rest of us sitting in the wreckage of what used to be a normal family dinner. Mom turned to me, her composure cracking. Well, I hope you're satisfied. You've turned your cousin against the family. Something inside me finally snapped. I didn't turn anyone against anything. Mom, you just showed everyone exactly who you are. I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. That money was Dad's gift to me, not yours to give away, because you've decided I'm not worth investing in. Casey, I'm done. Mom, I'm done letting you make me feel small. I'm done pretending your cruelty is normal. And I'm definitely done letting you convince me I don't deserve good things. I walked out without looking back, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my car keys. That night, I called Elise. We both cried from anger and relief, and something that felt surprisingly like hope. I've wanted to say that for years, she admitted, but I kept thinking it wasn't my place. Thank you, I whispered. I don't think anyone's ever stood up for me like that. Well, Get used to it. You're stuck with me now. We talked until 3 in the morning. By the time we hung up, I had a plan. The next Monday, I submitted my application to Riverside University's film program. The Monday after that, I got a part-time job at a local production company. I postponed the wedding, not because I didn't want to marry Marco, but because I finally wanted to marry him as the person I was meant to be, not the diminished version Mom had convinced me I was. Marco never questioned it or made me feel guilty. I fell in love with your dreams. He told me, I want to see what happens when you stop hiding them. The acceptance letter came 3 months later. I cried reading it, and Dad's voice echoed in my memory. I'll be the proudest father there. I studied hard, worked harder, and performed in every production I could squeeze into my schedule. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was living instead of just surviving. Marco and I got married last fall in a small ceremony at his parents' house. Their backyard was transformed with string lights and homemade decorations, filled with people who actually celebrated us. Marco's parents paid for everything without hesitation or conditions. I invited Mom. Yeah, I did despite everything. After months of silence, she'd started calling again, leaving awkward voicemails that almost sounded like apologies. At the reception, she pulled me aside near the dessert table I'd made myself, adorned with 3 different cakes because I couldn't choose just one. I owe you an apology, she said. I let my own fears get in the way of being your mother. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't tearful or transformative, but it was honest. And that felt like a start. I forgive you, I told her, because holding on to anger felt heavier than letting it go. But things have to be different now. She nodded, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Elise was there too, radiant in the bridesmaid dress we'd picked out together. When she gave her toast, she made everyone laugh, cry, and cheer. To Casey, she said, raising her glass, who taught me that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is refuse to let someone else dim your light. Later, after the last guest had gone home, and Marco was loading gifts into our car, Elise and I sat on the porch steps sharing leftover cake. So what's next? She asked. I thought about the short film I'd been working on. The one about a girl who discovers her worth isn't determined by other people's limitations. I thought about the wedding fund I'd eventually use to finance it, turning Dad's gift into something he never could have imagined but would have loved. Everything, I said. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. Some people will try to convince you that their fears are your limitations. They'll tell you you're not good enough, not worthy, and not likely to succeed. But those are their wounds talking, not your fate. The people who truly love you will see your light even when you've forgotten it exists. They'll stand up in crowded rooms and defend your dreams. They'll propose in pasta sauce-stained shirts and mean every word. They'll turn their backyards into fairy tales just to celebrate your happiness. And when you finally stop listening to the voices that tell you to stay small, and when you start believing the ones that tell you to shine, that's when your real life begins.